So
Everybody
once
can
it's
see us. Yeah, everybody can see your screen. You're good to go.
yeah, fine. So hi everybody. So welcome to this sessions of Blazor Framework. So today in these sessions we will discuss about the Blazor. Basically, it's a series of sessions. So today we are just taking the first episode, and this during these sessions we are discussing about the basic concept of Blazor, benefits of Blazor, and different time. So I'm Debasis Saha, working as a solution architect in Microsoft Pune. And also I'm a Subcon MVP and a Microsoft certified trainer, and also have around more than 12 years of IT experience in development different technology stack. So in these sessions, we will discuss on different topics about Blazor. So we'll discuss about what is the basic concept of Blazor, and also about the WebAssembly, because Blazor is majorly depends upon the WebAssembly concept. So we need once we need to understand the Blazor, we first understand the concept of WebAssembly. And also Blazor have different types of hosting models. So we will discuss about different types of hosting models. Out of the different types of hosting models, there are two different hosting models which Blazor mainly support. One is WebAssembly, Blazor WebAssembly, and there is the Blazor server side. So we'll discuss about the difference or comparison between these two, which are mostly widely used right now. And also we'll discuss about pros and cons of Blazor frameworks and in which scenarios or when we need to use Blazor, or particular which Blazor hosting model we need to use. And at the end, we will discuss about the Blazor project structure by using Visual Studio 2022. As this is a series of episodes, so first episode we will basically discussing about the introductory section and majorly theoretical concepts. So in this session, there is no such practical examples or coding part, but on the next episode onward, we are majorly work on the different part of the Blazors along with different code samples. So before going to start about the Blazor framework or in details, we first understand about the Blazor framework. So Blazor framework is basically first introduced by the Microsoft in the year 2018 with the .NET Core 5 or .NET Framework 3.1 code. It is basically is an open source based framework, just like as it is mainly developed or focused on the ASP.NET Core or .NET Core framework. So just like .NET Core, it is totally the open source based framework. By using this framework, we can develop or develop or create the client side based applications. So Blazor basically names is combines with the two different words. One is a browser, another is a razor. Because in internally, when we're using the Blazor applications for any type of hosting models, internally, when we write down any syntaxes, so we are majorly follow the razor syntaxes for the UI parts or the view part. So that's why the Blazor term is basically combined of the two words. So one is a browser and the other is a razor. So as we know that Razor is a .NET based HTML view engine generator through which we can generate the views by using the server side code in the HTML part, and it will on once this code is rendered in the browser, it basically rendered the static HTML text. So in case of Blazor, we can use different types of languages which supported by the .NET framework like C#, HTML, CSS, everything we can use in our Blazor applications to create any type of web-based applications. So in Blazor basically when we develop any web-based applications, we can create the different types of views by using the razor syntaxes, and Blazor framework directly render those or execute those views in our client browser or in our user's browser window. Also, at the same time, by using the reserve pages or reserve views, we can also write down some code in the server side or the client side part with the help of C# languages. So, as a C# developer or who is familiar with the C# programming languages, they are Blazor is not new for them because internally they need to work with the C# languages only. external framework has been changed, but internally when we write down any code, those are depends upon the total list of languages. And for the view part, we are majorly using the regional syntaxes. So it's quite easy for the persons or developers who already works on the C# language using the C# language of the MVC framework. Also, in Blazor framework, we can use the shared library concept or same code or same class as a shared library or shared code concept. So by using a Blazor, what is the concept? So once we develop any applications in Blazor, we basically develop the applications by using our C# code in the server side and along with views by using the Blazor component. So once this application is rendered in the browser, so it basically loads the Blazor.NET standard Blazor applications with the help of .NET standard or mono runtime applications in the browser, and it display in the browser. So it basically is a pre-compile applications, not a post-compile, just like Silverlight. It will basically pre-compile, and when it loads in the browser, it automatically translates the Blazor C# language code or Blazor syntaxes into the low-level binary languages and loads into the browser. So performance-wise, Blazor application is much more faster compared to the other language applications. But also there is some drawbacks or cons, which we'll discuss in later of this session. So before going to discuss about the next session of the sections of the Blazor, like about the hosting models or how we can create the Blazor applications. First, we need to understanding the WebAssembly. WebAssembly is very much important in concept of Blazor framework, because Blazor, when we run the applications in the client environment with the help of Blazor framework, WebAssembly will play an important role in that case, because for different types of hosting model of Blazor, one of the hosting model is Blazor Web Assembly, and that particular hosting model is totally depends on the WebAssembly concept. So first we need to understand what is the concept of WebAssembly in case of browser or web applications. So WebAssembly is basically treated as a low-level based assembly languages, which is basically known as a standard web standard. So whenever we run any applications in browser, it basically preferred to run the low-level based assembly language in the browser and display the applications part in the browser. So we can execute directly the web pages code at the same speed, just like native machine language. So benefits of WebAssembly is that when we execute the applications which is developed by using this WebAssembly based architecture or framework, it basically at the compile time, it basically convert the entire high level languages into as a low level language or assembly languages, and then that particular low level languages is executed in the browser. So at the end, we are browser read the low level languages, and browser does not need to convert any high level language to low level languages. So in that way, it will perform or loads the web pages in a very faster way. Performance is much more faster, just like a native mobile app. So the high level languages used to develop the web applications, just like C#, we can using C#, we can use develop the web applications, and it automatically converted into WebAssembly when we compile and deploy the applications, and then runs like a native code speed in the browser. So when the application is loads in the browser, it basically loads a WebAssembly or low level based languages code. So there is no chance of conversion of a high level language to low level language. So that's why the performance of that particular application is much more faster compared to the other languages. Also, in case of WebAssembly, we can use any type of server, conventional server-side language like C# or F# to develop any web applications, which can be run in the browser directly with the help of WebAssembly. Now, when we develop any WebAssembly based applications, now there is a one constraint we always need to understand, that we are thinking about a WebAssembly using in our browser, but definitely the target browser persons or browser type which normally our users are going to use, those needs to be supported by the WebAssembly functionalities or features. If the browser is not supported by the WebAssembly, then ultimately that particular application will not perform accordingly. So before going to develop any application, we first need to know whatever the browsers or which browser versions we are using can use to support the WebAssembly. But nowadays, most of the browsers have the WebAssembly based support. And these are some examples of version number which is supported for the WebAssembly, like just like Chrome. From Chrome version 57 onward, all the Chrome version browsers supported the WebAssembly. Similar like Edge, Firefox, Opera, etc. Nowadays, whatever the browsers we are using, most of the browsers are supported for the WebAssembly functionalities. So that's why there is no problem for the browser point of view. But yeah, definitely if any users or some of the users are still using the old versions of browser, then in case of Blazor, they can also use our applications by using the old versions. But in that case, we need to perform some trick in our applications also to support the backdated or old non-supported browser version. So Blazor is basically the open source based languages. So the source code of Blazor is basically is owned by the .NET Foundation, which is basically that is a non-profit organization. And main purpose of this organization is to supporting the open source projects which are based on the .NET framework. So according to the .NET Foundations, right now it is supported by Blazor framework is supported around 3,700 companies which are using the Blazor framework or supported the Blazor framework as a developer or different projects. Also, right now for Blazor open source project, there is around more than 61,000 contributors who are contributing their contributions in the Blazor project. Around right now, around 56 of active projects is running, which are using Blazor framework, and around 462 new resources is available in the GitHub repository under the Blazor repo, which can be used at any time as a reference point of view. So once we need to understand or use in Blazor, first we need to decide which Blazor model we need to use, because when we are going to use Blazor, we first need to decide which Blazor hosting model we need to use. Blazor hosting models basically have three different types of hosting models as of now. One is the Blazor server side. This is the first hosting model which is released in September 2019. And then last year, in the year of May 2020, Blazor Web Assembly hosting model has been released. And the latest one is the Blazor Hybrid, which is released in the last year with .NET 6, which is basically is for the called Blazor Hybrid model. The first two model is dedicated for the WebAssembly, obviously, or web-based applications, and the third one, that is Blazor Hybrid, is basically focused for a hybrid or cross-platform based applications for both web and mobile. So if we are wanting to develop such applications which is also required to deploy or use in the mobile devices, just like a mobile app, just like which can be developed by like now Xamarin or any other native programming language like React Native or like this. So in that case, we can use the Blazor Hybrid. Blazor Hybrid basically mainly focus on the mobile-based applications, and for web-based applications, we need to choose use either Blazor server side or Blazor Web Assembly. These are the two different hosting models. So we'll discuss about these three hosting models in detail so that we can understand which hosting model have which types of functionality and when and how, why we need to choose that. So first we'll discuss about the Blazor server model. So in case of Blazor server side model, when we developed any applications by using Blazor server side model and try to open that applications in the client browser, in that case, client browser is basically act as a thin client concept. without instead of a WebAssembly. So basically, for Blazor server-side hosting model, we does not require the support of WebAssembly because Blazor server-side model does not require WebAssembly. Depends on the WebAssembly. It basically opens the browser applications in the client browser, just like a thin client concept. Dumb terminal like concept. So code is developed and executed on the server side with the help of .NET Core runtime. So whatever the codes we are running, developed or executed or deployed, those are running in the server side only, and the output or the UI components or DOM elements only rendered in the client browser side. So in this case, there is a no communications or there is a no resource required for the client side. Only the browser is required. So that's why we are treated the browser just like a thin client or a dumb terminal, which does not require any special hardware or software requirement. Just only a browser we require. So whenever we require to update the browser or DOM element, we are normally using here the SignalR library for establishing communications between the browser and the server side. So here SignalR is basically using to update the browser DOM elements or send some messages or receive some messages from the client browser. Also, through this SignalR library or with the help of SignalR library, we can send or receive the asynchronous events between the client and server side to share different types of data on different scenarios. So whenever we are wanting to update a DOM element, we can use the asynchronous events by using the SignalR library and to send those data to the client side to update the DOM element. The application state on the server side linked with each of the thin client, which is basically known as a circuit. So here, when in the application state, when the application start executing or opening by the client or user in the client machine, then a particular application state exists in the server side, and that execution state is basically linked with each and every client browser. So if we consume that, we have a web applications, and that web application is right now using 5 different users from their 5 different machines. That means in server we have a 5 different application state for each and those 5 different application state is independent to each other, and those are directly linked with each every client browser machine. So that's why it is known as a circuit. For each and every application state of a client machine is known as a circuit. And these circuits are not tightly coupled with any specific network. Then suppose if due to any reasons, if the network communications or connectivity between the client and the server machines is breakdown due to some network issue or some any reason, so immediately it will not destroy. So it will resume. So after some time, it will again try to communicate with the client machine. And if it is at that time the connection is established, then again it's update, send the signals or send or receive the asynchronous events or signals for the browser. So as per the examples or as per the prototype, this is the basic concept of Blazor server-side app, that we are hosting the applications in the server side, which basically contains all the server-side related code like Azure Components, .NET Core or C# code, and user opens the applications in the browser, which is basically represents in the peak as a DOM, and that user interface is basically updated through by the SignalR event, so that whenever any send request or send or received by the client machines or client browser, we are communicating those requests through the SignalR. So once we are discussing about the Blazor server side, we first need to understand what are the benefits of using this model. So as per that, we can only choose whenever we require that this model is suitable for our requirement or not. So the major benefits of Blazor server-side model is that once as all the applications or every application state is basically linked with the server side. So when as a user we open this Blazor server-side applications in the client browser or in our own browser, that the application site which need to be downloaded, because as we know, whenever we open any particular website, each and every website basically locally downloads some CSS or static HTML file or JS or CSS, something in our client browser as a cache, so that from the next time it loads from the cache immediately. So whenever we are trying to load the Blazor server-side applications in the client machines for the first time, the application size or the download size is very smaller, because most of the code is basically exists on the server side, and only the response or out control related part is only returned to the client side by using a SignalR. So the application size is very much lesser compared to the other hosting models pattern. So at the end, the performance of the application is much more faster, because it basically load the application in a very quick manner, because the download size is smaller. So we can use the server's full features of .NET Core APIs, because all the code is running in the server side. So you can use all the functionalities of .NET Core or C# languages. We can use the .NET Core on the server side to execute the application, so we can easily debug the applications whenever we require. Because if we, for some scenarios, if we want to debug the applications to identify the root cause or the failure reasons, as we are running right developing the entirely server side code, so we can easily debug that application, just like other C# languages or with APIs where we are still working. Also, Blazor Server app is suitable if we are trying to run the application in such browser where WebAssembly is not supported. So if our targeted user is using such browser or some browser versions which are not supported by the WebAssembly, those versions not supported within in those cases, Blazor server side is the ideal choice, because for running the Blazor server side, we does not require the WebAssembly support of the in the browser. But also at the same time, Blazor server side has some disadvantages or drawback. Like Blazor server side app does not provide any offline support, which is basically provided by the WebAssembly. So we'll discuss about details in case of WebAssembly. But Blazor server side app does not provide the offline support. Offline support means if suppose I have opened the applications and due to some network problem, the network connectivity has been broken or disconnected from the, and my machine is disconnected from the server side due to no internet connectivity or some network issue, then the applications will stop working. This is the basic concept. But in case of other WebAssembly hosting model, it will not like so. In that case, WebAssembly hosting model will always provide offline support. So that is the another benefits of that model particular. So this is the one of the drawbacks of server-side model. Also, the scaling the application for a large number of users is one of the functional or technical problem for the provider company, because when we are using any applications in Blazor server side by the client, we are basically using the server side application state. So if we are using, if the my applications is by our application is used by 100 of users or thousands of users at a time, that means at the same time that 100 or thousands different application states will be maintained in the server side. So in that case, the server configurations must be like that so that it can contain. Otherwise, the performance will be deteriorated. So scaling the applications for many users always requires multiple client state requirement and client connection. So that's why it is takes some extra hardware resources or software resources in the server side. And also for Blazor server side, when we try to host the Blazor server side applications in any of the server, we always require a ASP.NET code-based web server so that these applications can run, because most of the code which we are developed in case of Blazor server-side model, those are developed in the C# or .NET code-based languages, and those are the server-side language. So for hosting those applications, we always require the ASP.NET code-based web server. And also in this case, we cannot implement the serverless implementation. Like if we want that we are hosting the application just like a CDN format. So that is not possible for Blazor server-side applications, because We always require a dedicated host server where we can host the applications for Blazor server-side hosting model. So after Blazor server-side, Microsoft wins, introduced the Blazor server-side, and after that, the next model which introduced by the Blazor Microsoft, that is called the Blazor Web Assembly. So for Blazor Web Assembly, it is basically totally depends upon the WebAssembly based concept. So when we are trying to run any Blazor WebAssembly applications in the browser, it basically runs the WASM or WebAssembly based applications on the client side. So whenever we develop any WebAssembly language and compile and deploy it, or try to load that applications in the browser side, internally it basically converts all the server-side language into WebAssembly and then loads in the browser. So in case of the user, when we first time load the Blazor WebAssembly applications in our browser, for the first time use Blazor app is basically downloads all its related dependencies. All its related dependency means it's related WebAssembly, .NET runtimes, and all are downloaded in the client side. So if our application is a large application, so for the first time, it takes some time maybe to load all the resources. But definitely for this for the solution of this functionality, we can implement a lazy loading concept so that as per requirement the dependencies can download all the dependencies of the entire applications cannot download at the very beginning or initial stage. And we can implement lazy loaded functionality so that whenever user click in a particular link, that dependencies related to the links can be downloaded in the browsers and accordingly. So the application is always executed on the browser by using the UI thread and handles the event related process. So in this case, there is no concept of server-side execution. All the executions which are normally executed in the WebAssembly part, all are executed in the browser section. So it totally depends upon the client machine. So all the CSS, JavaScript images which we are using in our applications are considered as a static file and download at the beginning. So if we make the applications without the support of web applications or ASP.NET Core backend support, so when we create the WebAssembly based applications, we can create it by two types. In one way that we can take the applications without support of the ASP.NET Core backend support. Backend support means we may not consider or include any of the server part of the applications. We are only develop the client part, and accordingly we can host, and the applications will work independently. And that types of applications are normally called the Blazor WebAssembly app. Whereas if we include the backend support or server related part also along with the client related part, those are known as the hosted Blazor WebAssembly applications. So these are the two different approach of the WebAssembly model, hosting model. So when we create the applications, we can select this functionality that either we require the ASP.NET Core backend support or not. If we are not required, then the backend related part will not included in our project structure, and we can create the entire applications in the client part only, and then compile and host the applications. But if we include this server side part, that also we can process. So in case of WebAssembly, there are many different benefits of using WebAssembly based hosting model. Like there is no dependency once the app is downloaded into the client machine. Means once we open the applications in the browser, for the first time, browser download the dependence and related .NET framework related dependencies into the client browser machine. So that once the first download is done, first time it's all downloaded all the dependencies, and then next time onward it does not require to hit the server. So in that case, it is automatically work as an offline concept. So in that time, so once I first time open the applications, and the next time onwards, when I open the same application, next time in that time, if don't have the proper network connectivity with the server, then there is no problem because applications will run in my local browser, in my local machine's browser by its own, because all the dependent part has been downloaded. So this is the one of the benefits that WebAssembly based Blazor applications also can go as offline, and the app will still continue working. And once the connection has been established, the related data, or if we say some pending actions is required in the server, those will be performed automatically. So as it is not dependent on the ASP.NET Core or server side, so ASP.NET Core web server is not mandatorily required to host the application. We can host the applications in any type of CDN-based serverless deployment mechanism like CDN. So you can upload the applications in a particular CDN and or any type of static or everything, and those can be downloaded in our local machines, and we can directly use the applications. So by using the Blazor Web Assembly, we can easily convert our web applications just like as a progressive web apps, so that the applications can act as the app in our in our computers as well. And in this case, we are not majorly dependent on the server side resources. So we are majorly depends on the client side resources and capabilities. So obviously, as per the application's capability, dependent related client resources is required. Like as we have said that WebAssembly basically depends upon the WebAssembly functionalities, and browser need to support the WebAssembly. Then only this application will work properly. So this is the one of the dependencies we require for the client machine thing, that whenever client is going to use the application, their browsers must be capable or up to date as per the requirement. Otherwise, the applications will not work properly. So except these benefits, there is some disadvantages also, like web application is dependent on the capability of browser. So if browser does not support the WebAssembly functionality, then the applications will not work smoothly. When the application is opened for the first time, it downloads the entire app-related resources along with runtime libraries and dependencies. So obviously, if we are not implementing we have not implemented the lazy loading concept, and at the first time, then entire application dependencies along with resources, everything will be downloaded. So in that case, sometimes the first time application loading experience, the process will be slower compared to the next time, because once it's downloaded everything in the client machines, then the next time onward it does not goes to server to re-download it. It's simply accessed from the client machine. So for the first time experience, sometimes Blazor Web Assembly is a little bit slower compared to the server side hosting model. But yeah, definitely to overcome this, we can implement proper lazy loading technique to make it faster. And also, as per the application size, it can take longer time to load the applications for the first time. As the applications entirely depends on the client machine, so proper software and hardware configurations are required for the client machine. So this is the one and only dependency on basis of the client machines, because if client machines or client browser does not support the WebAssembly functionalities, or does not have the proper hardware configurations or software configurations regarding that, then the applications will not work smoothly, or not even maybe not open properly. So except these two model of web application, there is another model called Blazor Hybrid. So Blazor Hybrid is basically used to develop native applications with the help of Blazor Hybrid hosting model. So it basically it can use the Razor components directly with the native apps with the help of .NET Core, because Blazor Hybrid model only focus on the mobile-based applications or mobile-based apps. So in this model, we can develop Razor components directly, or use the Razor component directly within the native app as a web view. So we can render those components as an embedded web view control by using the HTML and CSS. So whatever Razor component we have used for by using the Blazor framework, we can embed those Razor components into the web view as a web view control in the native part. And for this part, we can use different types of .NET framework applications like Windows Form, WPF to implement it. We can also use the Blazor Web View controls for implementing the Razor components within the applications to build the framework. And with the help of Blazor along with .NET, which is one of the new techniques or frameworks supported for the mobile app, open source based mobile app, we can develop any type of cross-platform Blazor Hybrid applications for both mobile and desktop. So this is the basic concept. So Blazor Hybrid apps can be used in both, either in a desktop as a native desktop app or in the mobile as a native mobile app. So both can be used. In both the cases, we are using the Blazor components as a web view control with the help of HTML, CSS. So the difference or pros of this model is we can reuse the existing components. Suppose if we have already developed web applications for any particular product and we want to create that same product for the mobile devices. So we can reuse the existing components which we have developed in the mobile apps, in the web applications for the mobile or hybrid models also. So whatever the components we have defined for any of the hosting model, we can reshare those in the other hosting model also for all the environments. Also, we can use the existing development skill for experience or resources. It is basically the C# based framework or .NET based framework. So for this technique, we does not require to a new learning path or new nothing. Whoever known, if someone is known have expertise in the Blazor Web Assembly or Blazor server side, then he or she can also develop the Blazor Hybrid model also. So we can use obviously our existing resources, and also we can use the complete native functionality of the device like mobile devices to use the applications. Except this benefits, there is some problem or cons also. Like we need to develop or maintain the separate native client apps for every target platform in this hosting model. Because in this hosting model, if we are trying to develop the same applications for both Android and iOS, then we need to develop and maintain two different projects for one for Android and one for iOS. Just like Xamarin, it is not possible to hosting the same applications in for both the environment. We need to create the different projects for both the environment, each and every environment. So accordingly, we need to create. Native client apps also require the extended time to fetch, download, and install compared to accessing the any web app in the browser, because whenever we trying to use the native applications in our desktops or mobile, we first need to install, download the APK, and then install, and then we need to communicate with, use that applications. So out of this three hosting model, first two model is basically depends upon the related to the web-based application. So when we are going to develop any web application, so we need to understand the difference between these two different models, that is Blazor Web Assembly and Blazor Server. So Blazor Web Assembly is basically depends upon the Web Assembly as the name so, and in case of Blazor Server app, it basically executes the C# code on the server side. It does not depend upon the Web Assembly. In case of Web Assembly, Blazor Web Assembly, it uses the different .NET runtime in the browser. So we can use different Web API server for the communication. Suppose if we want to save data in the backend or databases, and for that part, we can also use the if we have an existing API for any other purpose or for the mobile apps, then we can reuse those API in our Blazor Web Assembly part also. And for the server side, operating the communication with the server side part or the backend part. But in case of server side app, it's totally 100% .NET runtime framework. And it is always used the JavaScript based framework where the client establishes the server side part. Also, Blazor Web Assembly is much more agnostic toward the server side code. But in case of server side, it can use frameworks or protocol like API, GPRC, SignalR, etc. to communicate with the server. So for the first request on the client side, for the in case of Web Assembly, the entire Web Assembly applications related to SignalR assemblies and other static files will be downloaded. So it will take some time But in case of server side, it will does not take some time because in case of server apps, JavaScript hooks are used to access the DOM element in the browser with the help of SignalR. So Blazor WebAssembly is basically the front-end based technology. So when we compile it, we'll get a similar Webpack, just like we compile the React application, and that Webpack will be loaded in the browser. But in case of servers, Blazor server app does not compile anything on the client side. It mainly compile in the server side and send the signals or communications to SignalR or API to the client side. The application size of any Blazor or is much larger because it contains the .NET framework, WebAssembly dependencies, application dependencies, resources, everything. But in case of server side, the application size is much more smaller because everything is hosted in the server, and we just need to update the signals regarding that request. So when we are going to use the Blazor framework, there are some definite benefits. Like with the help of Blazor frameworks, we can use or develop any types of power-based or single-page-based applications, which can be developed by React, Vue, or Angular right now. So whatever types of applications we are developing by using React, Vue, or the Angular nowadays for any type of power-based application, same type of applications we can also develop with the help of Blazor. So it is much more faster, reusable, and open source, and also providing the tremendous support of the community. And another major benefit is that if we are the C# developer and they need to develop the single page applications and they want to use the Angular or React, that means they require a new learning path to learn that languages or that framework first, and then only you can use. But as the Blazor is used the basic C# and .NET framework, so what they already expertise in the C# or .NET Core or .NET framework, they can easily then start developing the Blazor without spending lots of time for learning, because it's ultimately it's a basically C# code or .NET code behind the scene. So in Blazor framework provide the server-side rendering also as well. Also, the another benefits as it basically support the spa-based applications. So just like React or Angular, Blazor is also totally depends upon the component-based architecture, just like the Angular or React. So when we develop any UI components or UI part, we always mark those component or sections as the components, and we can split our a particular web view or web page into multiple components, and also we can reuse those components in different types of UI. Also, we can implement the forms and validations by using the data annotations, etc., just like MVC in our views part. We can also use the JavaScript interrupt for implementing or injecting JavaScript or CSS in our applications, as it is supported by .NET Core framework or .NET framework. So dependency injection always is a part of this framework by default. We can use the routing configurations also as well, and publishing and app size reducing. And also we have a rich inclusion of tooling tools in the Visual Studio through which we can easily get help. And also we have a live reloading in the browser during the development. So during the development, it does not require to stop and compile and everything. By using Visual Studio, we have a live reloading. So whenever we make any changes and goes back to how browser, it will automatically update it at a runtime. So that is one of the benefits for the developers while developing anything. It does not require to stop the applications again, they build and again execute the applications. They can change the code at a runtime also. And so also we can run the same applications which are using the WebAssembly or Blazor WebAssembly for the old browser where WebAssembly is not supported. And for that purpose, we need to add the asm.js file to applicable to install or handle the WebAssembly based request. So the next question is, as we know that Blazor have different benefits. Now the question is when and which types, when we need to use the Blazor and which type of hosting model we need to follow, because as Blazor have three different types of hosting model or three different types of approaches. So if our target user use the browser which support WebAssembly, or alternatively, if our target users use the browser which is up-to-date browser, then obviously we can use the Blazor framework along with the Blazor WebAssembly app. If we can use the Blazor for desktop or a mobile except the web. However, this function is still in preview because it is not finally released. And we need to use either the Electron or web Windows in this scenario to implement it. We can use the Blazor server app for any type of intranet or internal type applications where we does not require a lots of users. We does not have any large number of users. If the application does not require many concurrent users, then Blazor server app is one of the best options to use. But if applications requires a large volume of concurrent users at a time, then Blazor WebAssembly is the best option, because in that case it does not require extra load in the server, because all the part is executed from the client machines or client browsers. Also, if we want to implement the offline based concept or PWA based functionality, so that for running or executing the applications, always internet connectivity does not required. If due to some internet connectivity issue or network issue, the connection has been, that particular client machine is not connected with any of the part, then we can use the WebAssembly sections also. That is the one of the better way to execute this. So now, if we want to create the Blazor WebAssembly Blazor project in our by using the Visual Studio. So once we open the Visual Studio and click on the create new projects, and we can search for the term Blazor. Once we will search the term Blazor, we will found that there are two different types of project template is available. One is the Blazor server app. This is for the Blazor server app web template, project template, and another is the for Blazor Web Assembly. So these are the two different hosting model is applicable for the web application based. So as per our requirement and choice, we can select any one of them. Suppose I have select Blazor Web Assembly app and click on next. We'll select the destination folder and application's name and click on the solution. Then if we click on the next options, then there is the options called, we need to choose the framework versions, which .NET framework we need to use. And then there is the options called ASP.NET Core Hosted. As I have said earlier that Blazor WebAssembly can be created for two ways. One is ASP.NET Core Hosted part. So in that case, server-side backend code is required. And if we are not required that, we cannot, does not require reflection. In that case, it will totally run in the client side. And also, if we want that these applications or Blazor service applications will be hosted as a PWA or progressive web apps in the client machines, then we need to check this checkbox also. Okay. So initially, I am not selecting anything. So later on this series, we'll discuss about this functionality in detail. So I'll click on the create button. So once we click on the create button, it will create a dummy template or default template of Visual Assembly. And in this project template, say it contains one single project called Blazor App 1, and it contains the pages, which are the regular pages, and also have a shared everything. So if we run these applications, it will run a static web page, which is by default template of the Blazor application. So I'll open another instance of Visual Studio meanwhile. And now I'll select another project, which is for Blazor Web Assembly app. And this time I will select the ASP.NET Core hosted checkbox and click on Create button. So this is the default applications of Blazor, which is created first WebAssembly section. So if we click here, inspect element, and go back here. Okay, I'll go back to the network part and click on the refresh button. So we can see that the network part, lots of things have been downloaded. Out of them, fonts, everything socket has been downloaded here. So in case of Blazor WebAssembly, everything will be downloaded the first time. So when and now if I click here and navigate to another page, there will be no download because everything has been already downloaded. If something is implemented as a lazy loaded concept, then only that particular link, that particular sections will be downloaded. Otherwise, related what are the dependencies has been downloaded, those will be used from the caches file. So I have already created another application. Okay, I'll close the and I'll create another application here. Click on next, click the ASP.NET Core hosted part, and click on create. So it will create another application. So in this application, as we have selected the ASP.NET hosted part, so in that case, there will be 3 different projects will be added. First one project is about the client. It is similar to the earlier applications project structure also for non-hosted part. And there is also 2 different projects is added. One is the server-side code, which is basically is a quite a types of MVC type applications where we can define everything, which will be that this part of code will be running in the server side. And also we have another project called shared project, which is basically the class library project, which mainly used to share something which is required to define for both client and server side. Then only we will need to define in the under the shared so that code can be used. That same library or same code can be used in both server side and client side part. So if we go open any of the pages which is developed here created by default, so we can found that this all are the major syntaxes which we are using here. Some of the static HTML part and for server side part code, there is a regex syntaxes we are using, and this is the internal regex syntaxes. We are simply using the C# based code. So all the basic concept of C# we can use here directly. So this is the basic concept of Blazor framework. So that's all for today. We'll discuss or continue our this learning series in the next episode, which is on 27 as the second part. So now, if anyone have any types of query, they can ask. Or otherwise, if anyone wants to connect with me regarding any type of query, this is my contact details. You can mail me or ping me in Twitter or LinkedIn. Or also, this is my GitHub repository where I can, most of the repositories is available to download the code. Is there any questions?
You all can unmute yourself and ask questions if you have any. Debasis, Caesar,
Yeah,
I think.
Cesar, yeah, Cesar have
Yeah,
a questions. Yeah, definitely, Cesar. I'll upload, I'll send you the mail or also share this PPT to you. And also I'll upload the GitHub repository. You can access my GitHub repository where CSAP corner Blazor repository I'll create and say upload this PPT also there. And also in that repository, I'll uploading the forthcoming code parts also.
perfect. And Debasis, would you like to inform them when is your next session?
Yeah, I think next session on 27th of
It is on
September.
27th this month, right? Yeah.
Yeah. In
So
that
wherever you
sessions,
all
we will start. Yeah, in that sessions, we will start the next part. That is the Azure syntaxes, basic concept of the Azure syntaxes.